Wisin told me to my face, he said, lo que validó esta música fue la chica. Those are his exact words. He's like, I can make a song, but if the women aren't dancing to it, then my song is trash. So, like, somehow women have always been at the center of the importance of validating this music. I think culture is just existing in culture. We're not necessarily pausing to categorize things like an academic would. Like, that's me. That's not culture existing and manifesting in real life. So I get to do that. Music is allowed to evolve, and I feel like that's what happened. Like, the function primarily, sure, was to be a medium of resistance and a voice for the people. And then eventually, like, people raised their voice and they were heard. And then eventually it's like, okay, we don't need to raise our voices so much anymore. También tenemos que celebrar la vida y hablar de otra cosa y cantar de otra cosa, which artists have the right to do. They're reflecting the times.
How are you doing today? And most of all, how are you celebrating Women's History Month? I'll tell you how we are celebrating at La Artisteada. We're bringing you something a little bit different from what we've done in the past, but some exciting conversations, as always, with music historians. Yes, you heard it right. We're doing a series this month where we're bringing you the best reggaeton, Brazilian funk, and hip-hop historians to talk about women empowerment in urban genres, or música urbana, women take over. And today, honestly, I've been extremely excited because I've been following this reggaeton historian for years now. So it is a full circle moment to be here talking with La Gata, Catalina Eccleston. She is a historian and multimedia artist. As a historian, her work through her culture-shifting platforms Reggaeton con la Gata and Perreo 101 have taught millions the history of reggaeton, and I've been listening to all of her interviews in the news. She's been everywhere talking in English and Spanish about reggaeton, but she's also been in major bands like Louis Vuitton. She's been teaching at Harvard, Google, Twitter, Giphy, Spotify, and many other shows. And we're here to talk all about reggaeton. So thank you for being here. First of all, my first question is, how does someone become a reggaeton historian? Like, we want to know all about you, how you got into this.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I don't give all my secrets, but no, I mean, there's only one me. There's only one me. There can only be one me. There's a lot of people who try to be similar to me, but there's only one me. I have studied reggaeton and have interviewed more reggaetoneros more than anybody else, and that's something I can say forever. And I never share my number so that I know that never gets surpassed. But with that said, no, yeah, there's only one me. I really don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, no, we absolutely love it. We also absolutely love the knowledge that you share. I've been listening to your podcast, and it is always very fascinating to see how, there's like a lot of music genres that are studied, but just the way and your approach about the genre is extremely fascinating. So, we wanted to make this series to talk about the topic of the month, right? Women empowerment. But I don't think that we can talk about women empowerment and about the genre without talking about its history, its foundations. It was a genre created by people from lower income communities. Also talking about politics. It was created by Black folks in like Latin America. So can you talk to us about how reggaeton started, and also your iconic difference between reggaeton and reggaeton?
I guess the best way for me to answer is that reggaeton is a fusion genre. Tú sabes, it has influences from many other genres, que sea hip hop, reggae, of course, dancehall, of course. And then, depending on what era you're speaking on with reggaeton, que sea vieja escuela, que sea algo más contemporáneo or something more contemporary, there are fusions of other genres as well, which is fascinating. Pero digo yo, that's the best way for me to describe los raíces de la música. In short, past that, like it's part of a parallel movement where there were artists who were just basically trying to like raise their voice during very difficult times. In Panama, during the dictatorship of Noriega, in Puerto Rico, during Mano Dura contra el Crimen, the Iron Fist against crime. In New York, there's that New York, West Indian, and their Caribbean connection, and that a lot of Puerto Ricans, took them Guagua area flights between La Isla in New York, and there's that exchange of culture there, con el rap, el hip hop americano, específicamente del Bronx, de Nueva York. And then también con lo que estaba pasando with the West Indians in Brooklyn, with Panama, there's an exchange with that too. And then, exclusively, people always forget about Dominican Republic and their influences, like majority of our, de lo que se considera perreo, que es diferente, right? A number of those producers like Looney Tunes, Tiny, they're Dominican. So, I mean, at the end of the day, esa influencia es de RD. Y también las influencias sobre like la jerga y cómo uno se expresa y la forma de ser y la forma de ser de un reggaetonero comercial, that has a lot to come from. Like I always give the flowers to PR and DR with that. Sorry, and then you also asked about reggaeton versus reggaeton. I'm also, also seems crazy. I am a musicologist, and so really thinking about what it takes to create this music. Like I'm literally in the studio, hearing these drum patterns and like touching the instruments that were there and that were used during the creation of these songs. Like I've been recreating some of my favorite tracks. I'm like, oh, it's un timbal. Oh my God, that's a cowbell. Oh my God, that's this. Oh my God, that's that. Like it's been really cool learning from people who were actually there. Divani, shout out to Divani, shout out to Looney Tunes, shout out to DJ Blas. One of my very early interviews, shout out to Tego. Tego is Tego is Tego. And so anyway, his their influences and the instruments that they actually touch with their hands, along with, of course, Fruity Loops. Pero no, mi punto es reggaeton versus reggaeton is my most listened to episode of my podcast Perreo 101, where I basically break down like reggaeton, como se escribe en español, Regueton, is, in my opinion, a phenomenon that like occurs by Puerto Ricans. And in my opinion, reggaeton, o sea, reggaeton, como se escribe like normally, reggaeton, in my opinion, is something that Panamanians develop. I feel like they're two different worlds. They collide, but I feel like hoy en día, like a lot of like what we listen to is actually reggaeton, like with that Gueton. And okay, got that. That's getting confusing. How do you differentiate it? What I'm essentially talking about is like pop, right? Like a lot of the intention behind the creation of these two different I consider them to be two different genres. The intentions behind them were very different. El de reggaeton era para hacerse comercial, to be commercial, to get that number one hit, para sonar en la calle. Reggaeton, in my opinion, like Panamanian, sure, like we were happy that our music like grew and that, artists like El General could do tours all over Latin America and Renato con su chica de Ojo Café, but even though he did reggae and dancehall, he didn't necessarily do reggaeton. But my point is that there were like different intentions behind it, different politics behind it. Lo que hicieron los boricuas era para mover el cuerpo, pero perreando. What Panamanians did, initially it started off like alzando su voz, raising your voice, and then it eventually turned into like, oh, música de fiesta. Pero even then, I'm thinking about El Chombo, who he actually made reggaeton, you know, utilizes like a lot of rhythms that are like dancehall. So
Mm,
with that said, and to like really sum this up, I think there's different intentions behind both of those words.
mhm.
I feel like Latinos, we don't like having more than one thing. I feel like we like to do this thing where it's like one for all. So I know a lot of people hear that and they're like, Gata, what are you talking about? Like, it's just reggaeton. And I'm like, okay, but if you humor me for a second, you'll actually like come to see that what I'm saying isn't really that far-fetched. Like, I think that this is something that occurred in culture. I think culture is just existing in culture. We're not necessarily pausing to categorize things like an academic would. Like that's me. That's not culture existing and manifesting in real life. So I get to do that, you know, but y yo tampoco, I don't also put pressure on people to adopt that idea, but I do appreciate that people hear me out. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Oh, thank you. No, I find it very interesting because sometimes like when I'm spelling it out, literally, I have to pause and I'm like, am I spelling it in English? Am I spelling it in like what is that difference, right? So it's honestly, I think it's very helpful for someone to kind of like educate also on the be educated on the history and how to bring value and respect to it. And then also I want to talk because I think it's interesting that you talk about the Panamanian history and like why it was built, like why the music was created in that moment versus the music in Puerto Rico. I think something that a lot of people don't know, it's a like you talked about Mano Dura, like this very deep political beginnings and origins that it had. And I actually I was reading this book called Remixing Reggaeton, the Cultural Politics of Race in Puerto Rico by Petra Rivera Ridu. That's a long title, but
Sure, love her.
fascinating book. And it's just so interesting to see like how this genre that started like underground, like people were stopped in the streets for listening to this music. But then when too many people liked it, then it was like, okay, let's shift and cater to this community and make reggaeton for them to like it.
Simple, but yes, te sigo.
Yeah. And but I just think it's interesting how like we sometimes like this history of resistance is not really talked about when like this genre has been commercialized. So I want to hear like what's your POV on this? What's your POV on how the genre is being manifested right now? And I want to connect all of this to women empowerment a little bit later into the conversation, but like the role of women in this moment.
Music is allowed to evolve, and I feel like that's what happened. Like the function primarily, sure, was to be a medium of resistance and a voice for the people. Primarily, that's why it was created. And then eventually, you know, like people raised their voice and they were heard. And then eventually it's like, okay, we don't need to raise our voices so much anymore. También tenemos que celebrar la vida y hablar de otra cosa y cantar de otra cosa, which artists have the right to do. They're reflecting the times. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase that like artists are also journalists. I love that phrase because it's like, you know, even though they're not writing articles with their music, they're like stamps throughout times in history. Like they're marking, you know, with every tendencia that we hear, gasolina, eso era lo que era, you know, like popular at that time. That's a moment in history. That's a piece of journalism. So, you know, and that's how I look at music también. So yeah, with that said, I feel like this music has evolved a lot, of course. I feel like there are different ways to para involucrar, to involve like political messaging without being so intensa. I
Mm,
do feel like we have gone so far to the point where like that's not even an idea anymore. One thing that we do as Latinos is we love to celebrate. We love to clap. Oh my God, we love to find reasons to clap. Oh my God, Bad Bunny's the number one artist in the world. Woo! You know, Shakira is on tour right now. Woo! We love to clap. Like we love that's our thing. And hay ventajas y desventajas en eso. There's pros and cons. In that sometimes when you're clapping, you know, and other people call out attention to things, because yo me incluyo en eso, like are often labeled as like negative Nancy's or, you know, like and malas vibras or whatever. And it's like, oh, pero se supone que I'm asking these questions for us, not for me. Like honestly, like I'm indifferent, but or it can be indifferent, but I'm asking this for us. But
Mhm.
we love to stick to good vibes, and that could turn toxic really quick because life isn't always about clapping. Like there's a lot of pain out here in the world, and if this music that started in a super political place is now, you know, being used exclusively just to clap, it's like uno tiene que cuestionar, like, what are we doing with our programming? Like, at what point do we pause and think about things as a culture? Is there such thing as going too far? Like, these are valid questions.
Mhm.
And honestly, like, I have been very quiet lately just because of my own sanity and just really been chewing on that because I'm not a martyr. Like, I love this culture, but I love me more. So being the person who's always asking difficult questions, like, me quite, to be honest, because I'm just like, what's the point of standing up for culture if culture doesn't stand up for me? I don't know. So I have pivoted a bit. And I love it here. Like things happen in the culture, and I'm like, that's not my business anymore. I've moved on. Like what just happened with Zoe Saldana and this whole Emilia movie. I'm just like, people are like, Gato, tú vas a dar un análisis. I'm like, no, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. Because in that same breath, like I see, for example, recently, and a publication, I think it was LA Times, was just praising Nati Peluso for bringing salsa back. I'm like, back from where? Like, and this is what I'm talking about. Like this type of nonsense. Like, what is the point of me calling out things like this? Like with Zoe, like people want me to be the voice of como que blackness and things of that go wrong, and simultaneously will turn a blind eye or even promote nonsense first chance they get, because fuck you mean that she brought salsa back? Back from where?
Mhm.
There are people who have been singing salsa, pero ustedes no le dan mente. Ustedes no le dan mente. If I had to guess, es porque son negros, es porque son dominicanos. And so, porque hay muchos dominicanos cantando salsa, mucho, mucho, mucho. Gillo Sarante, I haven't seen him get his flowers.
Mhm.
But somehow Nati Peluso's bringing it back.
As I self-identify, and I've talked in this podcast, I self-identify as a white Latina, right? Because I benefit from whiteness in different spaces. And I think that that is makes me even more responsible to advocate for people that are like for Black Latinos or indigenous people within the spaces that I'm in, because I recognize my privilege within Latino spaces, but also within non-Latino spaces. So, and I think that this goes into the conversation about, I guess, race within the music industry. I really wanted to talk about like how major artists also like are usually like major reggaeton artists that are like the bigger ones are tend to be white. And it's like, okay, how can we advocate and continue to support up and coming artists like Jay Noah, whom I love, or Lismar, who I love, who are also Dominican and who are incredible at their craft, but are still growing. Like in your experience, I guess, like, and in your knowledge of history, how would you approach that conversation?
I appreciate that. Because of what I'm going to say. I want us to get to a point in culture where we no longer frame things in that way because I think it's
Mhm.
violent. Like,
Mhm.
oh, there's Balvin and Bunny and Carol. Where the black people? Like, I used to do that. I used to engage in that. So
Mhm.
I'll like say that out loud. And what I find is that's violent, because at the end of the day, I'm not saying that Jay Noah doesn't have support or Lee Smart or these other people, but the odds are surmountable and against them. On top of that, they don't need that type of light. You know what I mean? They just need support. They just need love. So the best thing that we can do is to stop doing that. And I have stopped doing that myself
Mhm.
in regards to like, oh, pero ay, ¿dónde está esa? That doesn't do anything positive, you know? So yeah, the best thing we can do on a solution sort of note is just show them love. Like these numbers, it really is a numbers game. People really underestimate the power of just simply sharing, like, or como que being active. One thing I want to implement, and I will on Reggaeton con la Gata, is just, I don't want to even mention problematic people anymore. Like, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. And one thing I've had to accept as a professional in the space, as a critic, as a curator, and now as an artist, is that these people are not going away. Like, you can have your opinion till you're blue in the face. Guess what? They're not going anywhere. So what is the point in dar vida en cosas así? And en vez de toda esa energía going that way, put it into the people we actually say we want to win. Like, we ought to, as a culture, create a costumbre, a habit, a regular habit. I mean, every Monday, we're gonna go and see which artists are out there, and we're just gonna stream their stuff. We're just gonna stream their stuff. We're just gonna share their stuff. We're not gonna talk about, and I say Monday because I have hashtag Morena Mondays
Mhm.
that I'll be bringing back ASAP. But esto es mi punto. Like, every Monday, una morena, dale para allá. No menciona a otra persona. Say, no, 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 don't do that. Just show them love. Just, this is what we're doing today. You feel me? Like, that's what we need to be doing. Just showing them love. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to be following that hashtag Morena Mondays to stay updated on the latest artist. And I would also love to talk about, I guess, like going back to the history about artists like Ivy Queen. I think that like we and I think that everybody talks about her when we talk about female empowerment in history, because I think that she was a woman that was able to I guess like globalize or commercialize reggaeton, and also with her iconic song Quiero Bailar. And so I wonder, like, what's your POV on her, and also like on the female empowerment aspect of reggaeton after it has been like, I think even now it's hugely criticized for like objectifying women, and I guess now a little bit less than it used to. But what's your take?
Same note of what I just said. I love her anthem, Yo Quiero Bailar. It, of course, put her on the map. It, of course, has opened countless conversations. It, of course, is a timeless track. It, of course, is everything. What's my opinion on Navy Queen? She's everything. I love her. And I feel like we also need to treat her the same way as what I had just said previously. Like, Ivy Queen has so many other songs. She's constantly releasing music. I feel like we could do more to like be like, tú sabes que, let's just regularly check on our people, and she's one of those people. And I say this in this context because, let's be honest, she's older.
Mhm.
She's older. She has to enfrentar ageism, right? So, which hace la vida más difícil para ella.
Mhm.
So, like, I also want to get us in a habit of, sure, we can celebrate that song, but also let's make sure that we're supporting her in her new, because
Yeah.
she has to prove herself still, and even more, and at a way more impressionable rate, because of, like, all the things that she stood against. With that said, I really don't pay too much mind to that whole conversation regarding que esta música es desagradable, because I'm a girl who has always found identity in perreo. I was a teenager listening to Guatauba, listening to Plan B. I felt empowered. Like, I loved the reclamation I did with my body, my friends with their bodies, like how we danced together, like perreando. I'm in my mother's house right now, and I'm talking and I'm having flashbacks of like the perreo parties I used to have, and the times my mom would turn the lights on and try to separate us, and like, and the cops coming. We used to have times in this house. But por algunas mujeres que quizá no hicieron el trabajo suficiente por el desaprendizaje, for their unlearning of, misogyny, because sometimes we need to do that too. I think that's where I want to go with this. Like, there's a lot of women who have a lot of unlearning to do. Right now, it's 2025. Trump is the president. He's the president because of white women. He's the president because of white men. He's the president because of Latino men.
Mhm.
I'm just done. I don't
Yeah.
know if there's a tone that people are noting as they hear me. Yes, yes, I am done. I'm completely done. I've been done. I just came back from the Dominican Republic yesterday. Yo estoy en flow chilling. Yo estoy en flow, lo que me hace feliz. Estresándome por toda esta vaina de blanco para nada. Like, yo me quité. So, with that said, I feel like there's a lot of women who clearly have a lot of unlearning to do. I feel like this music was created by people who, yes, a lot of them were misogynistic towards women, but somehow the women always validated the music. Like somehow, like Yandel, no Yandel, Wisin. Wisin told me to my face, he said, esta mujer, lo que validó esta música fue la chica. Those are his exact words. He's like, I can make a song, but if the women aren't dancing to it, then my song is trash. So like somehow women have always been at the center of the importance of validating this music. Sin nosotras no hay reggaetón. So, like, es que los hombres no se van a perrear con ellos solos, unless estamos hablando de flow queer, which es otra cosa, pero, y eso es otra cosa. Los queers también, we have been validating this music as well, Can reggaeton do harm? Sure, but I'll tell you what I've told. This was the first question I got during my first lecture, and my first lecture was actually at Harvard 2021. And I had to explain it. So I said, if you want la suciería que salga de reggaeton, quítalo de la sociedad primero. Because it's like, it's just a reflection of life, As long as this exists in real life, you're going to hear it in the music. Just like in hip hop, just like in rock, just like in salsa, just like in all of these other genres. But somehow, because reggaeton hace que people are like actually perreando con su cuerpo, people like to like hacer una presión encima del reggaetón. Como si la salsa a veces no se pone con una frequería también. Salsa be nasty sometimes. If not nastier than like a lot of songs I listen to, but I don't see that same conversation happening over there porque se baila mano a mano.
Oh my gosh, we talked about a lot of different things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go back to that. I want to go back to that, including, I guess I'll go back to the first thing that you mentioned, Ivy Queen, supporting her now. I think that is a super important conversation because I think that like all of these, and I'm not trying to pit men against women, right? But I think that there's a reality that men who have historically had successful careers continue to have a successful career now. This, like, people don't think about their age. Ivy Queen, I absolutely love her. I saw her at a music festival 2 years ago, and she was the same herself as she's been since day one. And I was like, I absolutely love that because there's this horrendous idea in society that like we, after a certain age, or if we start looking a certain way, we're old now. And it's like, well, but I'm still a human. I still have the same desires. I still want to feel empowered, beautiful, and sexy. And I think that Ivy Queen is truly embodying that. And literally, when I see her content, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to feel exactly like she does when I'm her age, because I think we should, I don't think we lose a part of ourselves as we age. I guess like the world imposes that upon us, but it's like, no. And so I love that. She has done some incredible collaborations with Raúl Alejandro, Maria Becerra, that I'm like, everyone should go listen to that. And then also like new ways of supporting artists. I think that's something that is extremely important, that honestly, I would dare to say that it's slightly new for me, because I'm like, to me, it was new to be like, no, let's bring these conversations in, putting race at the center as someone who's not Black, right? I don't think white Latinos are having these conversations. And so I'm like, no, like we need to have these conversations so that we can push a narrative forward. But also, when you push a narrative forward, what is your daily action? How are you continuing to support at the center? And not to like go towards going colorblind, but to be intentional about the content that you consume, that it's actually taking action, right? So I love all of those things. And then you also talked about your body. I'm like, when I dance reggaeton, I'm like, I am feeling the best version of myself. And I think that that's something that's really interesting that you mentioned, that you like grew up going to these these parties. And I think I started like going out to parties after I was 18. And so it's like, I was, I guess, like a little older from like the rest of Latin America. But I think that like just like feeling empowered by the music, and also like taking ownership of the music, that like, because people, older people tend to be like, oh, but isn't that objectifying? And I'm like, right now there's an amazing TikTok trend. I don't know if you are a TikTok fanatic like me. But there is this current trend that I am also absolutely loving. It's women like being on the mirror and being, my psychologist told me to say affirmations. And then they're just like singing reggaeton songs. Like one of them, I wrote down, one of them was Choca by, both of them actually, the two TikToks that I've seen are by Plan B. Like this one is like, tú eres bonita de cara, tú eres bonita de cuerpo, tú eres bonita por fuera. I'm like, I absolutely love this. And then the other one was like with Es un secreto, and it's like, I don't remember the rhythm, but it says tú eres una Barbie, muñeca princesa, y no es de Mattel, tú eres perfecta. And it's just like this girl talking to herself in the mirror. I'm like, yeah, because that's how I just feel like this is a perfect reflection of how we're taking ownership and how we've taken ownership of the music throughout it. And it's so interesting that you mentioned, I forgot to mention earlier, that you said, was it Wisin that like he told you we need women, right? And it's like, that's crazy, because usually I don't think that when you think about audiences, I don't think that we think about the power of women and how we should be catered to, and how all women should be catered to, like. And so it's like, that was fascinating to me. Your knowledge is just so informed in like every possible way, right? You're a musicologist, and to be fully honest, I don't really know exactly, like, it's the study of music, right?
What I do is, I know how to read music, I know how to write music, I know how to produce music at this point. I have been producing music. I'm in the studio cantando at this point. But as an ethnomusicologist, that distinction is that I'm tying in together socio-cultural, socio-political history and trying to make that make sense of why did this music phenomenon happen when it did. You know what I mean? Like, or how it did, or where it did, or when it, like, it's kind of like the anthropology behind the production of the music. I'm really like I'm a super nerd for like the stories behind how the hell did you achieve that sound, and de donde vino eso, and because on the bigger level, I'm just so fascinated with how ancestral all of this is. And I'm super curious on how conscious people are or not when they're creating this stuff. Because again, culture is just culture. It's just existing. It's like, oh, I made this. Oh, this is dope. And then when you really pull it apart, you're like, oh, you know why you did that? Tú sabes que eso viene de esto. Y esto tiene raíces en esto. You know what I mean? Like, it's a longer thread. So I'm the person pulling the thread, but lately I find myself, sure, I'm pulling threads still. I'll always be a nerd for this. But also as an artist myself, like I find myself trying to create music with a complexity that hopefully will pique the interest of someone enough that they would want to pull this thread as well. So I don't know, by me studying history, I feel like has made me a better artist because my love and my understanding for this music, how it's made, the certain decisions, I take all of that in consideration myself.
Props to you for being this library of information in terms of like the actual music, but also of how it came about. That is fascinating to me as someone who also loves the history of this music. Also, now to maybe like start wrapping up this fascinating conversation, I would love to know, like, who are the artists that you love, that make you feel empowered, whether that is like through specifically reggaeton or any other type of music, but up and coming artists, and also like maybe bigger artists as well.
Oh, I love Jay Noah. I love, everything about her, who she is, what she stands for, her talent, her potential. I'm super excited for her. It's been lovely watching her evolve and grow and be supported. I'm super happy that she signed with Sony. Like, I'm super happy that, they see the magic in her. and that they're behind her. I love that for her. So Noah for sure. Goyo, I always love, like, same thing, like un amor, super talented, and super nice person también, I would say. Ima Soul, I'm obsessed with. She's a, she's an artist who we've, of course, have started off with a super professional relationship, but now I'm very proud to say that she's my friend. Super dope R&B artist. But let me not say that antes que ella me eche un boche. She's a super dope artist who happens to make R&B. Ella también hace música de otros géneros. Before she kills me, she makes music no, and I don't, yo no la culpo if that's, I respect it, So, like me, I don't mind if someone calls me a reggaetonera, but like I super get her. So with that said, no, at her Afrobeat, her R&B, and her corridos, they're beautiful. So, I love her versatility. I love her voice, most importantly. And más que todo, un amor de persona, una chulería de persona, honestly. I'm rooting for her so hard. Más de ahí, okay, rápido, Kathleen, rápido, rápido. Someone who's growing on me and I didn't see it coming is Yailin. Did not see that coming at all. Just because I really hate farandula, like, a lot. But I'm really proud of her. Don't know her from a hole in the wall. Like, we met maybe 3 times, but we never have spoken yet. But I'm proud of her. Like, she's so young, so young. She has had to basically mature in the public eye. That's not easy. She's clearly getting some development, and I think it's improving. I'm so proud of her. People, and I bring this up, and I think this is a lovely note to end on, in that, you know, nowadays, back then it was mixtape CDs, and then it became LimeWire and all that stuff. And then now, and then in records también. But now it's streaming and social media, and that's hard. I feel like it's getting easier and it's getting harder because you really have to stand out. You really have to, like, you really have to give a product and know how to sell that product. And sometimes you don't know how to sell your product. And sometimes your product is sold. I'm talking about artists as like a product. I hate this terminology, but this is industry talking. So, like, sometimes you are sold as a product and it happens so fast that you kind of can't grasp what's happening. And I think of Ice Spice when I think of Yailin, because it's like they're both super young girls. They were literally famous overnight, and then they're scrutinized heavy. And we're in a world now where people have no type of empathy for people who are popular. And I'm not on their level at all. They're A-listers. I'm maybe B or C. And, like, I even feel that as well. Sometimes I've had to, it's even affected my personal life, where I'm like, I've had to differentiate, like, oh, that person is a fan. They're not my friend. And I need to be conscious myself, because I'm talking about empathy. I'm not talking about stardom or support or none of that stuff. I'm talking about when people make mistakes, how are they treated, or when people are going through a very real life circumstance, how are they treated? There's this misconception of how artists live, and, like, what their lifestyle's like, because there's the things that they have to sell, because, like, in regards to image, but then there's reality, and I won't ruin it for people listening, but I do want to say, and this is something I wish was more, like, understood, that, like, artists deserve empathy too. If artists say que la cosa tan difícil, 9 times out of 10 it is, and they deserve empathy. So, that's something that I wish for more in the culture. I think we're very heinous, like, we're very como que, woo, once we see that someone makes it, we don't like to give no breaks, no stops. We're just like, and I think that that's making for that can contribute to an environment where we have bad art. Because if artists don't feel good, how can they create? So I don't know. I just want to say that aloud.
We love it. We love that message, because I think it's important. I agree that we are so dissociated from the person, that we don't necessarily understand that this is a person. You know, many times when we talk about artists, and to be honest, like it does surprise me that you talk about her, because I've also been seeing a lot of her content, and I am guilty of being like, oh, but how did she become famous? You know, like in my mind, that's like, honestly, I guess as a fan of other artists, like you do still feel that. I don't throw shade, I just skip. But it's very interesting, like how she has been able to come up, and it's like, wow, it's fascinating, and it's good. It's good to be able to like move on from the past. So I love this message.
We deserve it. Like I feel like women, we can be so mean, like so mean. And so, even I appreciate what you just said, because like, I do get it. Some people are like, okay, but why she get up there? And it's like, okay, but she's up there. Like be mad. At the end of the day, she's up there. Like, it's what I said earlier. You could be mad at someone. That doesn't mean they're gonna go away. So, now that they're up there, just show them some love, bro. Like, love is so easy. It's right there. Like you could be a hater or a lover. Why choose to be a hater when love is right there? Like, apóyala. She's so young. I said it before, and I'm glad I said it out loud publicly. Like, let's give her a chance. Let's let her cook. Let her cook. And so her, inspired. I can't imagine. Like, I have had 8 years to prepare for what I have coming next. And I, of course, have been more increasingly, thank God, in the spotlight. And I am happy to be where I'm at. I'm excited for where I'm going next, which is a new show on iHeart. So I'm excited. And so I'm excited for me. And also, I can't imagine being, what are they, 18 through 20? They can't be older than 22. I am 30. I cannot imagine being on that side of my 20s, being that popular at that rate, trying to figure things out, trying to figure out who your friends are, what your career is, what's the right decision, how to provoke the public to get a response so that you can get, it's like a lot. So I don't know. I just try to give empathy, because people think, oh, that life is easy. It's not. It's really not.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And okay, so you said that you have exciting things coming up. How can people continue to best support you?
Thank you for asking. Honestly, follow Reggaeton con la Gata, subscribe everywhere, YouTube, TikTok. And the best advice, and I'm sure my partner will appreciate this as well, I have some news. I have a new show. Reggaeton con la Gata is officially a part of the iHeart Network, my Cultura podcast. I'm super excited. It comes out on Monday, April 14th. Mi gente, like, download the app. Make sure you follow. Please share. Like, I know my partners will be super happy to hear that, but also it's just like the best way to support the show. And I really appreciate you for asking.
From Perreo 101 to this, I'm like, this is exciting. So congratulations on all of these achievements. And thank you so much, like, honestly, for sharing all of your knowledge. I'm like, you put in years and years of work to have such fruitful and interesting conversations. And I'm just grateful that you also gave me the opportunity to interview you, to talk about this topic that, honestly, I think it's so important. We consume this media so much, but rarely do we like talk about its impact. And so I feel like extremely blessed to have had this conversation specifically with you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope that you all go and follow Reggaeton con la Gata, and also download the iHeart app so that you can stay updated with all of the work that she's doing. But also, thank you for listening to this amazing conversation. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to stay updated on this series, Women Take Over, that we will be sharing all of our conversations this month, specifically talking about women empowerment. So stay with La Artisteada.